Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Naruto Fell for Cinder? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Cinder loathed the rain. For as long as she could remember, she'd never been particularly fond of storms. Perhaps that had something to do with her semblance. She was heat, fire. She didn't much like the water. In truth, the rain brought back memories of a time best forgotten. Old memories. A time of weakness. Memories that burned like acid in her veins. A time of silence. A time in which she was nothing. No one. A time in which she'd been a helpless child at the mercy of others. A weakling, scrabbling for strength in a world where the weak were cut down. Clutching her cloak closer to herself, she shook the thought away and kept walking. She wasn't a child any longer. She was strong. Now, she had a destiny. This particular storm seemed determined to stalk her every step no matter where she went, weeping from on high as she slipped through the slums of Vale. Dilapidated buildings rose on either side of her, stoic sentinels standing against the lightning and the thunder in sullen silence. Cinder glowered golden daggers at them, or rather, the warm lights flickering within. None were awake to question her presence at this hour. Indeed, if anyone had taken notice of her at all, she would have slain them out of spite. Such was her mood. For she had failed again. To be fair, Cinder was infinitely familiar with failure and all the humiliation it entailed. She knew what it was like to lose. To believe so desperately that she was right, yet fail all the same. The very concept had been carved into her hide and her back. More times than she could possibly count. Time and time again she had failed. First as a child, then as a teenager, then again as a grown woman in service to Salem. The latter often proved painful, but with pain came power, and she had proven herself a quick study since. These days, she didn't fail, not anymore. For the time being, her task was a simple one. Gather intelligence as to the state of Vale and return to the Gremlins to make her report. In good time she would find assets of her own, loyal pawns who obeyed her and her alone. Her strike at Beacon was still a decade off at the very least, little more than a distant speck on the horizon. Something to dream of and anticipate, but her time would come, but it was not now. She had yet to discern the identity of the Fall Maiden, much less secure set allies to do her bidding. Torchwick didn't count. The man and his moronic minions would obey out of fear. Fear of her and reprisal from Salem. An ally, Roman was not. Still, he would do as he was told. For now. But she hadn't found anyone of use to her. That alone made this outing a disappointment, even if Salem considered it a success. No mere thug or outcast would do. She needed individuals with some measured talent, yet in the same vein they couldn't be too arrogant because of said talent. Prideful fools were difficult to tame at the best of times, and she had no interest in acquiring someone ordinary. Easier said than done, of course. It wasn't as if a star would fall out of the sky and strike her in the head and oh dear what was the light. She looked up. Mistakes were made. An almighty explosion shattered Cinder's world without word or warning, shattering her thoughts to burn the world red. The sheer force of the blast ripped her from her feet and flung her back, sending her body skipping and skidding across the street like a flung stone. For once her training abandoned her completely. Her short-lived flight lasted until she finally struck a wall that actually managed to hold up under the impact. Aura gave an angry crackle. Pain snarled through her spine and her vision went white. Then came the fury. Right, then. Whoever did that, they were dead. No, she'd almost kill them, drag them back, then kill them again. Eyes reeling, ears ringing, Cinder Fall staggered upright, clutching at her head. And everything changed. She found not an angry huntsman before her, but an unconscious woman sprawled out in the street. Striking red hair could barely glimpse through the light rain in a messy tangle. Sullen steam drifted from her exposed shoulders. Her clothes were burnt to an unrecognizable mess, and she bore a grievous wound bleeding in her back. Cinder eyed the spreading pool of blood at her feet with mild disdain. Who was she? Why was she here? Was she dead? It certainly seemed so. All around her the ground was pitted and scorched, as though it had been caught in a terrible blaze. And yet bar that wound, the woman was unharmed. Curiosity compelled her to move despite her initial misgivings. Feeling terribly bold, she dared to creep close. Closer. Closest. In no time at all, she stood over the stranger, considering her as one would a strange and foreign treasure. What do we have here? A pale hand latched onto her arm with frightful strength. Fingers like iron dug into her wrist and yanked her forward, forcing a stumble out of her. Their foreheads collided. Alarmed amber burned into her baleful blue, set within a wounded yet haggard visage. Fear sparked to life in Cinder's scent despite her best efforts to stamp it down. Try as she might, she couldn't break the stranger's hold on her. In a fit of pique, she reached back for one of her blades and drew it, determined to hack the offending appendage away. "Where am I?" All at once the woman spoke, her voice a thin, hoarse whisper. "Who are you?" An angry scowl wrought Cinder's face. "I have no words for the dag." Her proud statement warped into a startled snarl when the woman tightened her grip. Clawed fingers pierced her aura and ground the bones of her wrist together to pinch the nerve. Had that been the end of it, Cinder Fall might well have scoffed at it and cut her down where she lay. She was trained to resist pain, outright ignore it, even. Salem saw to that. Cinder was not trained to resist the glowing chains that burst from the woman's bloody back and tore into her. Like a swarm of angry vipers, they latched onto every inch of her, coiling onto her arms, ensnaring her legs, circling about her neck, squeezing, constricting, choking the very life from her. In an instant, she found herself dangling in the air like some mad marionette on a puppeteer's strings. But that wasn't the worst of it. Pain. The touch of those chains brought fire, a hell she'd never known. Raw, primal agony burned through her body like a living flame, choking the words on her tongue. Her snarl became a scream. She couldn't think, couldn't move. She could only cry. Her blade fell from nerveless fingers and struck the street with a dull clatter. She hadn't the strength to take up the other. And still, the pain didn't stop. It just kept going. "I asked you a question." As she looked on, still screaming, those appealing blue eyes shimmered into a sinister shade of slitted scarlet. "Answer me, or by the sage, I will break you in half." She looked like she would, too. Even on her last legs, with her lifeblood pooling on the floor, this woman was strong enough to back up her words with violence. She could respect that. Admire it, even. If she weren't writhing in pain. "Cinder," the word escaped her in a gasp. "My name is Cinder." Her captor scowled at that, battered shoulders slumping once more. But she didn't release her. Tears of pain blurred Cinder's vision, and still the redhead pressed her. "This isn't the hidden leaf." Her hand fell away, and she used it to prop herself up. "Where am I? What happened to the village? Where's Minato?" "Fool," Cinder thrashed viciously in her grasp. "You're raving. I don't know what you're talking about. Answer me." The chains tightened, and agony that followed actually caused Cinder to black out for a moment. But only a moment. Pain caught her in its cruel claws like a bird of prey and dragged her back to the world of the waking. A tiny gasp followed. "You're in Vale, and I don't know anyone by that name. Please." She'd sworn never to beg to anyone, never again, but the pain overrode even that promise. "Make it stop." Before it, she felt like a helpless child. No, even as a child she'd not suffered this kind of torture. It broke something, deep inside of her. "You're hurting me." All the colors of the world began to fade away as she gasped for air. Death. This was death. She was going to die, here in the rain, alone and forgotten. No, not like this. She didn't want to die. In a fit of frantic fear, she cried out, "I'll do anything." That frightful gaze narrowed upon her. "Anything?" Cinder dared a tentative nod, all arrogance stripped away by the torment she'd endured. Anything. So long as she could escape. She just needed a moment to catch her breath, to recover her strength. She couldn't hope to fight this woman. Not as she was now. She would flee the very first chance she had, and never ever look back. Slowly, inexorably, those ghastly glowing chains slackened. Just a touch. Just a little. Not enough to free her. Barely enough to let her breathe. She SCK in a ragged breath, all the same. "They're after him." The woman stretched out an arm plaintively, the arm she'd kept against her breast. "I can feel myself fading." There was something there, something she hadn't noticed in her panic. She was cradling it close to herself. "Everything's so dark. You have to protect him." An awful cough shook her body, and she spat BLD. "Keep him safe." Her eyes flashed, and she shook her head, swaying in place before she rallied. "If you harm so much as a hair on his head, I swear I'll finish what I started." She slumped over with a wordless cry and said no more. Bereft of their MSTR, the chains went slack and dissolved into motes of golden light. Free at last, Cinder struck the floor and scuttled backward like a drunken crab. Him? Who was she talking about? She wanted nothing to do with this madwoman. Still, her gaze betrayed her and swept to the bundle in her arms. What was it? Gold, jewels, whatever it was, the woman clearly thought it was well worth dying for. Her babbling hadn't made much sense, but the man seldom did. With each passing moment, she felt her courage creep back, like a dog that had been kicked one too many times. In the absence of those horrid chains, she began to feel bold again. Trembling fingers reached in and pried it from her limp grasp. With great care, Cinder peeled back the pale linen. Trembling fingers grasped the damp cloth and tugged it away. A weak little wail answered immediately. She jerked back with a frightful start. Only her honed reflexes prevented her from dropping the bundle outright and dashing his head against the wet cobblestones below. A baby! For there was indeed a babe in her arms. A newborn, only hours old. Small, tiny, with blonde hair and whiskered cheeks, crying for his mother. A mother that lay dead at her feet wait. Cinder looked back, startled to find the woman was gone. Only a bloodstain remained. She balked at it. Had the air rippled just now? Was she imagining things? What manner of magic was this? People didn't just vanish like that. It wasn't done. She didn't even have a moment to ponder it, because the babe in her arms began to cry anew. Cinder balked and ducked into an alcove to evade the worst of the rain. The boy kept crying, of course. He was wet and cold and hungry. It made her even more miserable. With a put-upon sigh, Cinder called upon her semblance to heat her palms. Gently, very gently, and careful not to burn the babe pressed against her beast, she took the heat and spread it out across the linen wrapping him. Within moments he was snug in her arms, if not necessarily safe. She'd never held a child before, and some tiny part of her was terribly afraid because of it. She rocked him in her arms slowly, careful not to make a single sudden movement for fear of what might happen. Still, the terror persisted. What if she slipped? What if she dropped him? What if he started crying again? There? You're warm. Happy now? She revealed none of these fears and scowled at him instead. Hush. Incredibly, he did. Blue eyes peered up at her, staring into her soul. Oh, she managed eloquently. The assassin stole a glance over her shoulder. No one was there. None were here to watch her. Of course not. The hour was late, and the storm was fierce. A quick check to the left followed by the right only further served to confirm her silent suspicions. They were, the two of them, alone. None would bear witness to this deed. Whatever choice she made, no one would see it. It would be the simplest thing to drop him in the river. She had little faith in orphanages after her own experience so many years before. It was a cruel thing to consider killing a child, but was not death was kinder than life? This boy was nothing. A memory hit her like a physical blow, and with them, words spoken by a little girl, so long ago. Without you, I am nothing. Cinder shivered, and not for the rain. She was a monster. She knew that and felt no shame for it. Embraced it, even. She had murdered many in service to Salem, and she would no doubt slay many more. But there were still lines she dared not cross, tabubs that even she dared not violate. She knew what it was to be alone. To be no one. Nothing. Unbidden, the woman's words came back to her. A dire threat made in her final moments, the oath of a mother who would never live to see her child grow up. She looked down. There was a name stitched into the blanket. Naruto. She sounded it out, then blinked at it. Not the name I would have chosen. The boy babbled softly and wrapped a tiny hand around her index finger. Just like that, Cinder Fall was undone. Her heart skipped a beat. Never had she felt this. A strange sensation bubbled up beneath her breast. The tiniest ember of empathy sparked to life. He was only a few hours old. If left alone, he would surely die. Lightning flashed overhead. Thunder crashed against its heels, rumbling through her ears. And with it, a dull ache bloomed in her scent. The boy might be useful someday. She told herself a lie to make the prospect sound sweeter than it was. She could keep him, raise him, train him. By the time the assault on Beacon came, he would be loyal to her and her alone. Surely there would be no greater asset than this. Sure. A small voice sighed in the back of her head. Go ahead. Keep telling yourself that. You've already made your decision. She really had, hadn't she? Her pride bridled at her choice regardless. She was Cinder Fall, terror of Mistral, evil incarnate. She would not be undone by some bawling babe. One day she would slay all maidens and take their powers for herself. She would take the relics and overthrow Salem. She would be legendary, invincible, eternal. The world would tremble before her. She had no need of petty attachments or distractions or. The boy mewed softly. Cinder had her tongue at him. I hate you. She did not, of course. Not at all. Nay, not in the least. Humming a familiar lullaby under her breath, Cinder Fall settled in to weather the storm. Hush, little baby, she sang and began to rock the child in her arms. Don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a rocking bird. Cinder spent nearly 2 years hiding in Vale. Initially, she didn't have much choice in the matter. One does not simply bring a newborn into the Gremlins. Salem's domain was a harsh and inhospitable, and quite frankly, her tower only moderately less so. It was no place for a newborn. Naruto would have died if she took him to her MSTRs straight away. Looking back, it certainly seemed like a reasonable, reason. In truth, Cinder knew she was making excuses. So many excuses. She could have left the boy at an orphanage at any time. She could have abandoned him on someone's doorstep. But she couldn't bring herself to do it. Every time she managed to muster up the nerve, it deserted her at the last second. And so she stalled. She purchased an apartment for herself and slipped out of the public eye. Domestic life disagreed with her like a wet cat, but she fought it as she did all things until she finally managed some semblance of normalcy. And it worked? For a time. Cinder dug her heels in and pretended to do Salem's bidding in Vale. In a sense, she did. Roman was kept suitably terrified and thusly pliable for their needs. He was told when to act and where, given dire threats if he thought to slip his leash. All the while Cinder stocked up on essential supplies. Baby formula, food and water, warm clothes, that sort of thing. Money was no object to one such as her, and thanks to Roman's quivering acquiescence, she had plenty on hand. Things began to change. She raised the boy, her boy, with a tender love and care she had never known, never been shown all her life, yet instinctively knew all the same. Awkwardly at first, but she soon began to warm to her new role. He looked at her now, recognized her when she called his name. Finally, she could forswear her duty no longer. One day, Salem summoned her back to the Gremlins to make her report. She could not be denied, and he could not be hidden forever. As much as Cinder wished it were so, she knew it was no longer possible. She couldn't trust Naruto with Roman. Certainly not Neo. Neither knew of him, and blast it, she would keep it that way as long as she could. There was no honor among thieves, even less among killers. She trusted no one, had no friends to speak of. No, there was no choice at all. And so, with dread whispering in heart and fire howling in her soul, she stole a bullhead and made the long journey home. No one expected her to return with a child cradled in her arms. Not Hazel, not Watts, and certainly not Tyrion. She hoped the looks on their faces would make it worthwhile. Underscore 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 underscore. Cinder stepped off the bullhead. She braced herself for an ambush, half expecting the flock of Nervamore wheeling overhead to come crashing down on her at any moment. But they didn't. They hadn't even bothered to buzz her craft on the way in. If they had, she would not have walked away unscathed, to say nothing of her ward. She chose to take that as a sign as she disembarked. After all, if Salem wanted her dead, she would be dead. She tried not to think about that as she slipped up the stairs and into the tower. Her heels CLC'd against the stone floor. The noise echoed through empty halls, each step bringing her closer to her deliverance. Or her doom. She wasn't sure which. But she did not flinch. She mustn't flinch. To do so now would show weakness, and showing any sign of frailty here would be the end of her. She was strong. She was mighty. She was a force to reckon with, a force to be feared. Biwa? Hush, dear. She stole a glance over her shoulder. This will all be over soon. Little blue eyes twinkled back at her, and she nearly came undone all over again, just as she had on that fateful day. Behold the mighty Cinder Fall, with an infant strapped to her shoulder like some sort of fishwife. Fear her and tremble. Oh gods, the embarrassment was lethal enough. Mama! Pudgy little arms patted the back of her neck, reaching up for her. Mama! Cinder felt her heart skip a treacherous beat. Mama. She did so love hearing that word. Such a clever little boy he was. Not even 2, and he'd already begun to speak. He wanted out of the carrier, of course. She couldn't blame him for that. But she couldn't hold him in her arms do that, because if she did, her hands wouldn't be free. If it came to a fight, she had to be ready. She must be ready. Not now, she cooed. Later. She was still speaking to him when Hazel emerged from a door ahead of her and cut them off. Unexpected. She hasn't thought he'd be here. Watts or Tyrion, perhaps, because they lived to needle her for even the slightest perceived failure. But the presence of the gentle giant actually came as something of a surprise to Cinder. She could understand the motives of Kalos and Arthur, but Reynard always confused her. His sister had died to Grimm. Why the devil would he side with Salem? For revenge? Ozpin couldn't be killed. Not permanently, at any rate. She's waiting for you. Have you taken leave of your senses? When he saw Naruto, his gentle baritone became a startled roar. This is no place for a boy. Cinder released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Now this, she had expected. She'd spent months preparing arguments in her head. Hazel didn't need to be convinced. Nor did Watts. Certainly not Tyrion. No, she need only make her case before Salem. She did not slow, she did not stop, and so kept walking. Her shoulder struck the giant's scent and forced him back half a step. He is mine. She withstood his ire with a scowl, walking with poise and purpose toward her destination. The matter is closed. You're being foolish. After a moment, his footsteps thudded after her. Salem won't like this. Cinder's confidence curd, but she hid it well. She'll see reason. You're set on this course, then? She scoffed. I am. Judging by the low growl that followed her, this blatant defiance didn't much amuse him. Too bad, it wasn't his choice to make. If he laid so much as a finger on Naruto, she swore to take his entire hand. She'd only just reached the door to the throne room when she heard him give a finally parting shot. As you say, then. I will see him return to civilization should anything happen to you. Cinder bridled, eyes flashing with anger. Nothing will happen. A seed of doubt was planted nevertheless. In the end, all she had was hope. She forced the door open. Underscore 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 underscore. They were waiting for her, seated at the table. So nice of you to join us. Watts saw her first and rose from his chair. Whatever took you so, what the devil? All the mockery he prepared died on his lips as he balked at the babe on her back. Despite her peril, Cinder felt herself smile as he balked at her. Just a touch. Just a little. But this was a memorable day already. The great Arthur Watts, stricken speechless. She would remember this moment for that, if nothing else. Her scroll flashed out and CLC'd once, preserving it for posterity. You child. He stabbed a finger at her with a sputter, mustache twitching like some sort of fuzzy caterpillar. Why do you have a child? Why not? She smiled. More gibberish followed. She couldn't make heads or tails of it. Ha! Tyrion bounded over to behold the bundle in her arms next and burst into a cackle. Oh my, a child! I never thought I'd see the day. Cinder reared back as he crept closer, rubbing his hands together like he'd found some precious jewel, the absolute loon. Are we going to keep him? Or kill him? Or maybe you'll let me?" Naruto whimpered. Just a little. It was enough to set Cinder right off. All the world went red. Her right hand made a fist and blurred upward. Kalos sailed away with a shriek, spitting teeth. Watts clapped at the sight. My, and what have you brought me?" Any levity she might have felt shriveled and died with those words. Cinder stepped back, shielding the child with an arm. A tiny hand touched hers. She turned her body further, shielding him. Here it was, the true test. The moment of truth. Should Salem accept him, Tyrion and the others would fall into line. They'd have no choice. Her word was law. But if she didn't, well, she didn't want to consider that ugly option now, did she? She willed her hammering heart to be still, forced her racing pulse to calm, and took a deep breath to steady herself. Only then did she dare face Salem. What she found there surprised her. Cinder had been prepared for anger or even shock. She found none of it in that pallid white visage. If anything, their queen seemed almost bemused. Was that the right word? She wasn't sure. Try though she might, Cinder couldn't quantify the look on her face. That did more than just unsettle her. It terrified her. Salem was notoriously difficult to read even on a good day. She could be quiet one moment, then raging the next. But she wasn't looking at Cinder. Nay, her gaze remained fixed upon Naruto. Salem did not shout. She didn't rant. She didn't rage. She didn't reave. She just stared at the boy, as though not quite sure what to make of him. Naruto stared right, blue eyes wide. Red tore into blue, but if the boy felt any fear, he didn't show it. As such, when Salem finally found her voice, it was little more than a whisper. A baby. That actually got a reaction from little Naruto. Abois. Tiny arms reached out and grasped at the air. Salem twitched slightly. No. Someone snickered. Cinder never knew who. Cease. Salem scowled in the direction the noise had come from, but Naruto didn't relent. Much to Cinder's chagrin, her son, usually so well behaved and such a good little evildoer, actually became fussy for the first time. He began to squirm on her back, and she shifted him from the carrier into her arms in an attempt to calm him. No dice, determined to have his way. His nose wrinkled and those little whiskered cheeks turned an alarming shade of pink. Oh, this was going to end poorly for her. She just knew it. Why had she thought this a good idea, again? Without word or warning, her MSTRS stood and glided across the room towards them. Naruto quieted immediately. Baby blue eyes followed her. For one wild moment, Cinder considered bolting back to the bullhead. Consequences BGMI. Tyrion pushed himself upright with a groan. Watts took a swift step back, ready to avoid the explosion that was sure to follow. Hazel just stared. No one dare speak for fear of breaking the spell. All the world held its breath, waiting to see what would transpire from this sudden pall of silence. The Queen of the Grim leaned forward, placed both hands on her knees, and frowned at the boy. "Do you not fear me, child?" Naruto cooed softly, reached out, and grabbed a fistful of Salem's hair. The ghost of a smile flitted across her face. Then the boy yanked. He yanked strong. Salem hissed. Cinder died inside. Well, that settled it. She was dead. She was absolutely. Why was Salem laughing? She jerked back, somewhat alarmed as their queen threw her head back and did just that. It was a rusty, brittle sound, as though it hadn't seen use for thousands of years. That may well be the case, given the nature of her immortality. But it was there. Salem never laughed, ever. That she was doing so now could be a sign, or an ill portend. She wasn't sure which. Quite suddenly, it ceased. Such a spirited little lad. She hummed and tugged her hair free from the boy's grasp. Very well. You may make your case, Cinder. Convince me. ASWCH flipped in the back of Cinder's mind, jolting her into action. Roll with it. Her manners were smooth as cream. He will be loyal, my queen. Those eerie red orbs rounded on her. Will he? Would Salem force her to choose between her or the boy? Didn't want to choose. Gods be DMN, she wanted both. She wanted power and prestige, but she cherished the spark of warmth his presence kindled within her all the same. Perhaps that was weak of her. Maybe that was selfish of her. It probably was. She'd never been a sensible person even in her youth. Certainly not now. He has strange powers. Not untrue. Her son had begun to display some unusual gifts that seemed well beyond a semblance. I would see them used for our cause. Salem, oddly enough, proved inquisitive. Will you protect him? Cinder stood her ground and lifted her chin in defiance. It proved answer enough for her dark queen. Approach me. Cinder did so, prepared to bolt at the slightest provocation. She was admittedly less than confident in her ability to escape, but she would if she must. It went against her every instinct to hand him over to Sale, not for fear of herself, but for fear of what their queen might do to him. In the end, she needn't worry. Salem didn't take him from her. A pale hand settled upon the boy's head, considering him as one would a fine jewel. Naruto cooed softly. A tiny hand flailed outward, touching her cheek. Salem went terribly still. Something in her cold gaze began to thaw, just a little. When she smiled again, it almost felt real. I always wanted to be an ant. Naruto made his first kill when he was 9 years old. It wasn't something Cinder planned for. She'd not intended to BLD the boy until he was a teenager, and even then, under controlled circumstances. Naruto was a gentle sort. He didn't like to hurt if he could help himself, and it was a habit that had stuck even through his training. Make no mistake, he wasn't afraid to fight if it came to that, and by the brothers he was learning quickly. But she knew in her heart of hearts he would never kill unless pushed. When the chips were down, he would fight for his life, but to end a life? Unfortunately for her, Destiny and Salem had other plans. She'd just come from a DMN discussion with her MSTRS on that very matter. Blast it all. She'd left for one day, and this happened. Looking back, Cinder was almost grateful to her MSTRS for forcing his hand, if only because it meant she didn't have to make him do it herself. It would hurt her as much as him, and she had no one to blame but herself for it. At some point he'd come undone. The realization galled her. Any chance of seeing him as a pawn or a minion was long gone. He was an ally, of course, but before that he was her son. The old her would have scoffed at such weakness, ripped it out and stomped it to pieces. The new her couldn't. In no time at all, Cinder reached the door. Her arm stretched toward its, fingers pressing against the cool surface. An ear followed a moment later as she listened against the silent stone. Beyond lay the training room. She knew who was within. She could hear him mumbling to myself, and she braced herself, grit her teeth, then slammed it open with both hands. A massacre awaited her within, a red ruin that would have made Tyrian green with envy. Her gorge rose at the sight. Naruto awaited her within on his knees, spattered in BLD. It wasn't his own. Not my fault, he muttered to himself, scrubbing at his cheek with a ruined. They tried to kill me, had to do it. Even as she looked on, his injuries began to mend, clawed fingers becoming human once more. Yeah, I know that now, still he rambled, but they wouldn't let me talk him down. His nose wrinkled in response to a voice she couldn't hear. You helped, didn't ya? He nodded. You too. Maybe you're not such a bad fox after all. Cinder's left foot shifted ever so slightly against the gravel. The sound echoed in the chamber. Naruto's head snapped up. Mom. His face lit up, and he climbed back to his feet as he saw her. You're back. Say what you would about her boy, but he was fast. He blurred, nearly leaving an afterimage in his wake. He slammed into her torso, driving her back a pace and nearly knocking the wind out of her. For a moment all her worries softened, and she instinctively returned to the embrace. A scarred arm came down to ruffle his messy hair. Then she saw the BLD in said hair and remembered the bodies. The aspiring maiden fought down a flinch. What have you done? Cinder spoke the words aloud, knowing what his response would be, but wanting to hear it from his own lips. Salem said these were bad guys, you know? He looked up at her, a glimmer of red light fading from his eyes as he hugged her legs. She said these people wanted to hurt you, kill you. His jaw clenched in anger, so I hurt them back. Did you attack first? The words sounded hoarse, even to her own ears. Nah, I tried to talk him down. Only one listened to me. He turned and pointed at a man's body, more intact than the others, only missing an eye and an ear. That one's Bruno. Her boy beamed at their fallen form. He had some kind of weird regeneration semblance. I had to try really strong to kill him. Her voice hitched. Why? Why? I think I scared him to death. He just fell over. Cinder squinted at the man. Sure enough, his face was frozen with fear. She frowned at the other corpses. 3 men and a woman. None of Ozpin's known agents were among them. Pity. She didn't even recognize these poor fools. Judging by their weapons and garb, they were huntsmen out of Mistral. No doubt Lionheart had provided them under some false pretense. In all likelihood, they'd probably been drugged. Which meant her son had killed 4 huntsmen with his bare hands, without breaking a sweat. Even if the 4th had died to the weapons of his fellows, that was still a frightful thing. By the brothers, her son wasn't even 10. Stranger still, he looked utterly at peace. There wasn't an iota of guilt to be seen in those baby blue orbs. "Did I make you proud, Mom?" He tugged her sleeve, grinning up at her without a care in the world. "Are you proud of me? Do you love me?" Golden eyes fixed on him intently. Saw the BLD on his face. In that moment, Cinder knew he'd be stronger than all of them someday. Perhaps even stronger than Salem herself. He wasn't even in his prime. The thought frightened Cinder, not for herself, but for how the boy might yet be treated. If Salem saw him as a threat, if others banded against him because of this strange power, he would die. Quality was all well and good, but numbers had a strength of their own. He needed her. "Of course, dear." Cinder knelt down and embraced his forehead, then drew him into a quivering embrace. "You were marvelous." She felt him grin against her. "I'll get even stronger. Just you wait. Next time, you can take me with you." "Yes," she swallowed. "That sounds grand." Maybe it was time to get him out of the tower for a bit. Or better yet, take him with her when she left on business. If he grew up here alone, with so little guidance, he was going to become just as twisted as her. It had already begun. She had to. Before it was too late. She wouldn't let him become like her. If he became even a fourth of what she was, no. Absolutely not. She refused. Which meant she had to swallow her pride and do something truly distasteful. Underscore 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 Roman whistled. "You've got a kid? Never would have thought it." Cinder willed herself to breathe. In, out. In, out. "Not one more word, Roman. Not a one. I will burn you." "Nah," he shook his head and tugged at his hat with a Cheshire grin. "You won't. You need us. Otherwise you wouldn't be here." Those words echoed through his safe house, sealing Cinder's fate. For what felt like the umpteenth time, she resisted the urge to simply eradicate Torchwick outright. It would be so simple. A quick snap of her fingers, and he'd find himself skewered with molten glass. By the brothers, it was tempting. He was grinning from ear to ear now, the cheeky BSTRD, leaning upon his cane as though he'd just handed all the world to her on a silver platter. Because she had, and they, the 3 of them, knew it all too well. In revealing Naruto to them, she revealed her weakness. Cinder loathed weakness. They could take him, use him against her. No. Her hands grounded into first at her sides. Breathe. In the end, Naruto broke the stalemate. Indeed, Cinder's son leaned around her legs and dared a wave in their direction. "Hello," he turned a disarming smile upon the 2 thieves, wholly ignorant of who they truly were. "Do you work with my mom? Are you her friends?" Cinder resisted the urge to snort. Friends? These 2. They were deathly afraid of her. Roman quirked a brow at her son, yet Neo nevertheless returned the boy's wave with a bemused smile. In the end it fell to Torchwick to speak. Neo certainly wouldn't. He scratched the back of his head. "More like asset, Blondie." "Ah, really?" Naruto pouted and scuffed one bubbed against the ground, looking like a kicked puppy. "And here I was going to call you Uncle Roman." Never mind, she never seen Roman pivot so fast. "We're friends, the best of friends." Her child clapped happily. "Yay." Cinder caught the gleam in his eye, a faint curl of his lips that she knew all too well, and resisted the urge to smile herself. Clever boy. He'd taken her lessons to heart. Why have enemies when you could persuade them to work for you? Truly, her son possessed a silver tongue unlike any other. If she didn't know better, she'd think it a semblance. But it wasn't. He was just that good. Too pure. Her motherly instincts flared back to life with a vengeance, and she grappled with the urge to sweep him away. Must protect. No one will touch him. Neo pointed a finger at herself and seeked her head to one side. Naruto beamed. Sure, you can be Auntie Neo. His words left the mute preening like a proud peak CK, all but cooing over him as many had before. Cinder couldn't help but marvel at it all. Not even 5 minutes and Naruto already had them eating out of his hand. Such a terrifying little creature she'd raised. Was this what pride felt like? Pride in someone else. Unfortunately, it was overshadowed by unyielding concern. Would he be safe here? He had to be. He must. You are to watch him while I'm away. She delivered her instructions with cold fire, eyes narrow and intent. One of you will remain with him at all times. If someone harms so much as a hair on his head, not even Salem herself will save you from me. All right. Roman recoiled a little, perhaps recalling her backer. Sure thing. We'll take care of him. No need to get her involved. Salem wouldn't be, if she could help it. Naruto couldn't stay here forever, not with Salem demanding regular visits, but it was a far sight better than spending his every waking moment in the bleak halls of her tower. If left alone there, he'd lose his mind. It was a dark day when she considered these two the sane option. Roman and Neo couldn't hold a candle to Tyrion and the rest, but at least they didn't run about killing anyone who opposed them. Well, Roman didn't. She wasn't sure about Neo. One simply never knew with Neo. Neo stretched out her arms and hopped in place. Cinder scowled. No, you can't babysit him. The little hellion stomped a butt. Fine, but only on weekends. And so a truce was struck. Underscore 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 underscore. They say time waits for no one. Neither did Naruto. Even for her. Underscore 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 underscore. Why are you running? Why? Because she was terrified. You see, Emerald had pickpocketed the wrong person. She flung herself down a vacant alley, leaped over a trash bin, and kicked it aside behind her. Laughter reached her ears as her pursuer bounded over it. Persistent, she skittered away into a thoroughfare, kicked off a wall to gain some distance, and grabbed at the first thing within reach. Tan hands hooked in an awning overhead and yanked it down behind her in a desperate attempt to throw off her pursuer. A startled yelp greeted her ears for but a moment, and in her hubris, she slowed. Mistakes were made. He tore through the fabric and pelted after her, grinning like an absolute loon. Crazy BSTRD, she ran at once, hollering over her shoulder. Just give up. Leave me alone. Nope, never, he hollered back, still grinning as he ran. I want to talk to you. Emerald snarled and clambered up a set of stairs, running for the rooftops. He pelted after her, giving chase yet again. In hindsight, it all seemed so obvious. He'd been too easy a mark. More fool she for stealing his wallet. Really, what self-respecting kid wandered the markets of Vale looking like that? He was asking for it. Anyone would have done the same. It wasn't her fault. She hadn't eaten in days, and she was so hungry, and he looked loaded. so she'd flung her semblance at him, wrapped him in an illusion, and robbed him blind. Easy as can be. No, not so. He'd seen through it and caught her wrist. "If you need money that badly, you can mine," he'd said, pulling out a few bills. "But this wallet was a gift. I'm afraid I can't let you take that, you know." 13 and terrified out of her wits, Emerald Sustrai naturally did what any child with half a brain would do. She bumped it. That had been, 5 minutes ago? 10. She'd long since lost track. Her body hadn't. Little lungs screamed and her lungs burned with each leap, every fiber of her being begged for rest that wouldn't come. How was she to know this crazy-looking boy would chase her down? Worse, he was laughing, treating this all like some bloody game in NeonZangetsu jump. Her knees buckled briefly as another leap nearly ended in disaster, forcing her to tumble or risk breaking a bone. Emerald forced herself back to her feet and pressed on with a gasp, grimacing but a little as she heard her pursuer land behind her. All too soon, she found herself faced with an even more daunting gap, too large for her to make. Her heels dug in of their own accord, bringing her up short. She cast a quick glance back, then considered the leap anew. If she could just trick him somehow, make him misjudge a jump. No dice. Her hesitation cost her dearly. Something heavy collided with her back and bore her down to the ground. Aura crackled sullenly. "No, they'll never take me alive." Panic bleated through her mind in a heady storm, turning all her thoughts to jelly. She kicked out with a yelp and was rewarded with a cry of pain. Someone grabbed her heel and flipped her over. Emerald went mad. "Give up already," she clawed at them, digging her nails into their face. He laughed. "Not a chance. Give up, on me giving up." Strong arms slammed down on her shoulders, wrestling her down to the ground. They grappled wildly with one another, and by some miracle, she got atop him. Her hands clamped down on his throat, determined to keep him from doing the same to her. But he didn't. His hands fell from her shoulders. Red eyes met blue. Sapphire really, framed by blonde hair and dirty whiskered cheeks. As she looked on, the scratches she'd inflicted upon his tan visage began to heal. She shrank back, frightened all the more. Was that a semblance? Aura or something? She wasn't sure. The uncertainty hounded her like a starving dog. "I'm not gonna hurt you." His smile swept all that away, sunshine itself. "What's your name?" "Emerald." She warbled but didn't let go of his throat, tensing in preparation of an attack. "Why'd you try and mug me?" He frowned up at her as she sat atop him, speaking quickly. "Don't think your parents would like that." She glanced away, irritated by his sunny disposition. "I don't have anyone." "No one?" Her words seemed to baffle him. "No one at all?" The little thief grit her teeth. "What's it matter to you?" That strange boy wrinkled his nose at her. "It does matter." Quick as a flash, he did something with his hands, and she found herself sitting atop a battered log. "What the—" "Right, that settles it. Then, we're family." A scarred hand descended on her head from behind, mussing her dirty hair. "I'll be your brother. You'll never go hungry again." He could have stabbed her in the back, but he didn't. Emerald's heart skipped a beat. A host of foreign emotions sprang to life in her scent, and she grappled with them, to no avail. This was a trick, right? Wasn't it? Had to be. This didn't happen. This wasn't a fairy tale. People like her didn't get happy endings. Urchins died in the streets all the time. No one cared about them. No one spared them so much as a second thought. So why here? Why now? She hadn't felt like a child in quite some time. To be given hope like this, his words undid her. "Really?" "Yup. I don't go back on my word." The blonde hooked both hands behind his head and grinned down at her. "Mom says when you make a promise or a threat, you should keep it." Emerald had never expected to have a sibling, let alone a big brother. It was an oddly pleasant feeling. Warm, but not painful. She wasn't sure to make of it. He was a kid after all, just like her. Really fast and strong, but a kid nonetheless. He looked, well, rich, loaded, one of those posh types with more money than sense. Was he a noble? Probably not. Their kind wouldn't chase a thief down in broad daylight without calling for the guards which even now had yet to materialize. She looked up and dithered. He saw it, but didn't interrupt, even when she did. "Who are you?" "Naruto." That winning smile flashed out again. "Just take my hand, Emerald." When she flinched away, He reached for her. Everything's gonna be all right. I promise. When he offered her his hand again, she took it. Tiny tan fingers threaded with his. He tugged her along and trailed after him. Later, when he began to train, so did she. Later still, she met the woman Naruto called Mother. Even later, she found herself adopted into the Fall family, and the world changed a little more. But for better or worse, who could say? If any harm comes to them, I will kill you. Torchwick pinched the brow of his nose. Yup, got it. Cinder's brow furrowed, molten gold eyes regarding him intently. Roman. What more do you want me to say? Her pawn flung up his arms with a snarl. I get it. I'm disposable. Harm so much as a hair on their heads, and I'll lose mine. He yanked his hat down to cover his eyes and ripped out a fresh cigar to dote upon. Don't worry about it. The brats will be fine. Enjoy your vacation. She swatted it from his lips. This is not a vacation. I have a task I must fulfill, and I cannot bring them with me. Roman stooped low with exaggerated patience and retrieved his cigar. Then, with yet more grace, he cleaned it, set it to his lips, and resumed puffing. Then don't worry about it. Have a little faith. Faith? What faith? She had no faith. Still, it was the closest thing she'd get to an answer from him, and so she pivoted, just a little. I expect you to be on your best behavior as well, she addressed his companion, because the same applies to you. If I see so much as a scratch on them. Neapolitan snapped off a merry salute with one hand and raised a sign in the other. Cinder scowled at the haphazardly sketched smiley face upon its white surface. Where she'd found the blasted thing, Cinder had no idea. Still, it certainly made communication that much easier. Her task complete, Cinder Fall turned to face her children. I'll only be gone for a few days. She tried to ignore their teary eyes and failed miserably. Don't worry, I will return before you know it. Naruto and Emerald beamed up at her, looking ever bit the innocent angels they were. Yes, Mom. A low heat suffused Cinder's faxi. Oh, gods. Her knees nearly buckled, and she felt wobble. Too pure. Must protect. No, she was Cinder Fall. She was evil. She was wicked. She was fear incarnate, and she would not fall to such base displays of affection, if it was the last thing she blast it all. In a single seamless movement, she bent knee and opened her arms. Her children all but slammed into her arms. Look after one another, she whispered to them, holding each tight. Remember, you are a Fall. You carry my name. Her arms pulled them as close as she dared without hurting them. My heart, my pride, these people are beneath you. If someone strikes you, strike them back. If someone insults you, break their face. Naruto frowned up at her. Was that it? No, wait, I remember now. Break their legs. That's my boy. She patted his head. Remember, neither of you need friends, only assets. Emerald frowned, her lips pursing just so. Are we assets, then? No, not having that. She hugged them close. Of course not, my dears. You're the exception. That was enough for them. It took everything she had to stand and bid them farewell, but bid them farewell she did. Her every instinct as Mother screamed that this was a bad idea. She marshaled herself against such needless worries, even as they began to cloud her every thought. What if one of them tripped? What if they stubbed her toe? What if they missed her? In the end, she committed their tear eyes to memory and promised to return. It was the least she could do. She would, at least, be better than Rhodes. The door CLCKed shut behind her. The moment she did, Neo pivoted and held up another sign. 2 words lay scrawled across its clear surface. Ice. Cream. Naruto and Emerald grinned from ear to ear. Yes, please. Fine. Roman began chain smoking all over again. All right, we can do this. What could possibly go wrong? Poor Roman. You really should know better by now. Never, ever say those words. Silly man. He brought it upon himself. underscore 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 underscore. Not even a full day later, they met a rather curious girl. The first thing Naruto noticed about her, beyond the fact that she was out in the park after dark, were her striking red hair alongside stirring green eyes. And she was currently clutching her knee. Also, presently covered in dirt and bawling her eyes out. Important things. She looked so sad. No. Roman took one look at her and hissed in his ear. Don't you dare. Keenly aware of Emerald's eyes on him, and knowing she would judge him forever if he didn't do something. Well, the little blonde did what any big brother would do. He shook himself free of their minder's grip and walked right over, dropped down to his haunches, then knelt before the poor girl. She took one look at him and scrambled backward like a drunken crab. It only made him pity her all the more. Hey. He put on his best smile. You all right? I don't know you. The girl sniffled, but a little. Leave me alone. Nope. He smacked his lips with an audible pop. Why don't yo tell me what's wrong? The girl looked left. Then she looked right. Her voice warbled a little. I don't have anyone. She chewed at her lip. Father left me here, said I'm a failure, told me not to come back. What kind of parent did that? A seed of anger sprouted in Naruto's Saint, threading its hateful vines through his heart. He couldn't imagine Cinder doing such a thing. And she said her father had done this. He'd not had a father before. Roman was more an uncle than anything else, while Tyrion and the others were great uncles. Neo was almost certainly their aunt. Salem was just something else altogether, but he digressed here. The point in all this was simple. Family didn't abandon family. Yet someone had clearly done so to this poor girl. She wasn't even 10. She probably couldn't even fend for herself. That was wrong. That was cruel. Something ugly stirred in the back of his head. Someone ought to do something about it. Maybe someone should. But now was not the time for such things. That's not right. His brow furrowed. What's your name? Pyrrha. That's a lovely name. Naruto's smile didn't waver. Mind if call you Purr? When she shook her head, he reached out to ruffle her dirty red hair. And your old man, what's his name? When she didn't answer, he gave her a nudge. Come on, no need to be shy. We're all friends here. Roman huffed. She's not my friend. Neo kicked his shin. Heh, totally best girl. Caesar. The little redhead uttered the name so softly it may well have been a whisper. His name is Caesar. Naruto burned the name into his memory. Well, all right. He kept his smile fixed firmly in place. You can stay with us. Emerald absolutely hissed. You can't do that. Can. Did. Naruto beamed back. Big brother privileges. In his heart of heart, he was already making plans. He still had his scroll after all. Someone should burn Caesar's house down. With him in it. Wait. He did have Uncle Tyrion's number. Underscore 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 1 week later. Underscore 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 underscore. I do so love a bit of murder in the evening. Tyrion Kalos whistled softly as he waltzed away from the scene of the crime. Better set a fire or two, Or 3, maybe 4. Be sure. Wouldn't do to be discovered, after all. Underscore 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 Cinder pinched the brow of her nose. Neo. The mute beamed. Why is half the city on fire? She held up a sign. Roman did it. The MSTR thief flung up his hands. Lies. Really, it wasn't the entire city, just a few blocks, and a few more, and oh dear, those flames were spreading rather quickly. She looked down as a hand tugged at her sleeve. Nor was that the only surprise she received that evening. And what's this? She frowned down at her son, more so the girlie currently clinging to his back for dear life. The aspiring maiden took one look at her and sighed. She saw the soot on their faces. Emerald's too. There was BLD on Naruto's cheek, and it wasn't his own. No doubt they were at the heart of this. Of course, she couldn't prove anything, but still, she suspected all the same. Another one? We can't go around adopting everyone we take pity upon. No. His voice, always so soft, rose against hers. She stays. Be that as it may. She stays. Naruto stomped a little foot and made a face. He had that look about him now. The same face he always wore when she knew he was going to be difficult about things. Truly, her son's ability to recruit other children was unmatched. By Emerald standards alone, he was already 2 for 2. Something told her he wouldn't take her refusal lying down. No, not this time. Her gaze shifted to Emerald. And? What do you have to say about this? She's all right. I'm fine with it, Mama. Her youngest scuffed a shoe against the street. She really wasn't. Cinder swore softly. Curse her soft heart. This would come back to bite them, she just knew it. Yet try as she might, she couldn't harden her heart against it. With a put-upon sigh, the flame wielder shook her head and rose to her full, towering height. Very well. She beckoned him forward. Bring her. But on your head be the consequences. Before Cinder's very eyes, a glimmer of hope sparked back to life in the redhead's gaze. She lifted her head just a tad, just a touch, but it was enough to capture her attention, and let her see the abuse she'd suffered at the hands of her family. Oh, dear. Poor girl looked to have had a rough time indeed. Small wonder her son had taken pity for her plight. It was simply his way. I can stay? Aha, she spoke. Not a mute then? Good. Didn't need more of those. A small smile touched Cinder's lips. Dear girl, of course you can stay. So began the fall of Pyrrha Nico's, and what a fall it would be. Marcus Black died badly. As far as deaths went, Mercury considered his father's end to be a particularly gruesome one, if only because the BSTRD neither heard nor saw it coming. Marcus never saw the man who killed him, never had a chance to look into the eyes of his killer, never did anything at all. He didn't even get to scream. There was a flash of red light, an awful ripping sound, then his head just fell right off his shoulders, like some great overripe apple tumbling off a tree. It struck the ground, bounced once, and came to rest at Mercury's feet. There was a certain poetic justice to be had in that, he found. The man's eyes were bulging, mouth still moving, lips trying to form words. A faint rasp escaped him, somehow. Diamenio. Really? Those were his last words? Screw him. Mercury snarled and raised a leg with intent. His father's piggish eyes widened as the shadow of a butt filled his vision. Then his son stomped down. Strong. BLD flew into the air to spatter across his right cheek. He stamped again just to be certain, wiped his bloody butt against the grass for good measure, and stumbled back on aching legs. Only then did he dare take stock of his situation. Reality snapped back like a rubber band. New legs? Check. The hasty prosthetics were still holding up. Semblance? Check. He considered his hands, mildly surprised to find that the void in his soul had been filled. Well, That was something of a pleasant surprise. He didn't think the old man would ever give it back. Yet someone or something had wrested it back there just before the end. Nice. A cursory glance over his shoulder confirmed his suspicions. His home was still burning merrily behind him, engulfed by hungry flames and his past with it. Freedom was his. Not a bad 14th birthday, all things considered. Now if he could just figure out how to address the bloody red monster standing before him, that'd be great. Mercury wiped a line of crimson from the corner of his mouth as he regarded his unlikely ally. He'd certainly come tearing out of the trees quickly enough to help him. And yet, sheathed in scarlet light from head to toe, the newcomer looked like some kind of crimson god, wearing the faint outline of a fox. A silhouette formed entirely of energy, with a single tail of crimson wrath swaying behind him. He stood hunched over Marcus, what was left of him, furious red eyes glaring spitefully down into his corpse. BSTRD. The blonde snarled. You don't do that to a kid, good riddance. Against his better judgment, Mercury coughed. Thanks for the help back there, though you stole my kill. Baleful blazing eyes met his, red as BLD and slitted like that of some fell beast. His teeth grit in a snarl. For an awful moment Mercury wondered if the blonde would attack him. He was already on his last legs. Literally. It wouldn't take much to finish what Marcus has started. A stiff breeze would end him right about now. Then the blonde blinked, and those scarlet slits shimmered into sapphire. He straightened his back with an awful pop, and that shimmering shroud burned away, evaporating into the night. Phew, he stood and wiped a bead of sweat from his brow. Sorry about that. Still getting the hang of this power. A clawed hand scratched the back of his head, smoothing back into human fingernails. Hope I didn't startle you too badly. Right, this kid was cracked. What are you looking at? Well, my mom sent me to look for Marcus Black. He nudged the corpse at his feet. Seems I found him. Recognition flashed through the young man's eyes. And you're his son, ain't ya? His grin only grew in the silence that followed. I saw your fight from the tree line. He taught you well. Mercury shrugged weakly. Guess so. So, what's your name? His savior beamed, heedless of the BLD on his face. You've got one right? As he looked on, the whiskered warrior extended a hand unto him, offering his palm freely. Mercury considered it for a long moment. Why not? It wasn't as if he had a slew of options right now. Nowhere to be, nowhere to go, naught but the open road before him. Besides, this kid was throwing him a bone. This felt like fate. Mercury. He gave up and clasped the stranger's hand. And you are? Naruto. His erstwhile ally replied all too happily. Wanna be friends? It was that grin. That DMN grin that sealed his fate. And not just that of Mercury Black. Of so many things. Underscore 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 underscore, and time marched ever onward. Underscore 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 underscore. Are we strong? Naruto barely heard the words. His fist scythed through the air, bleeding droplets of sweet and red chakra. Clad in crimson, it smashed through a pillar, then sent that pillar crashing into yet another, all but demolishing the training grounds. It didn't satisfy him. He was so close now, he just knew it. So close to a breakthrough. It was only a matter of time until he learned how to make this power work for him. Well, without losing his mind. You could always open the seal. A familiar voice growled through the back of his mind. You'll have all the power you need, then. You know that's not something I want to do. And not for the reasons he thought. Even if you keep your word, I don't think I'm ready for that kind of power. He and the fox had come to an accord of sorts. Grumpy BSTRD still wouldn't tell him his name, though. He would one day. He was sure of it. He just needed time. Stop ignoring me. Emerald's voice cut through the fog of war at last. startling him with a hallucination of spikes. He jerked backward with a start and found his sibling glowering darkly at him. "I'm sorry, did you say something?" She stood a little, gripping her right arm as she did. "Are we strong?" "Well, yeah." He pivoted in place with a smile. It became a frown when he beheld Emerald's pensive expression. At 15 years of age, they were fit in a way most children were not. All lean muscle with little in the way of any real fat. Cinder had laid the foundations of their training. Neo had improved them. Hazel took them a step further, and Tyrion further. Still, the four of them weren't necessarily the strongest, but they were getting there. Strength. Sometimes he wondered if he was missing something in his life, but such moments were few and far between. He was happy, he was loved, and he had a big family. What more did he need? "What's wrong?" He turned to face her completely. She looked away, not quite trusting herself to meet his gaze. "Does Mom really love us?" "Why would you say that?" Irritation twisted his smile. "Of course she does. She's just been busy. Remember, she's due back any day now." The door to the main yard swung open with a harsh crack, echoing that very statement. Naruto rounded on the sound and his faith was rewarded. "There you are." Cinders swept in like a hurricane, eyes wild. "Pack your things. We have a mission." Emerald sat just a little straighter. "We?" Pyrrha and Mercury paused in their own regimen. "Wait, you mean all of us?" "Yes, of course." Cinder's smile was positively euphoric. "All of you. Come with me. It's time." Underscore 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 underscore. Do what must be done. You cannot hesitate. Show no mercy. Underscore 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 underscore. There was a girl camping on the side of the road. Naruto saw her and knew he'd found his target, just as he knew what was coming. He tried to put this off, tried to delay it, tried to find a way around. It just wasn't possible. Mom wanted the maiden power. No, perhaps want was too weak of a word. She needed it, craved it, as she did nothing else. He didn't quite understand why she was plenty powerful without it, only that she did. And to claim that power, to take it for her own, and make it hers, someone had to die. It was one of the few things they disagreed on. No one could sway her. Not Uncle Roman, not Aunt Neo, no one. In the end, he could only support her. She was family. It was all he could do. "Please don't be the maiden," he muttered to himself. "Please don't be the maiden. Please, if there's a god out there, don't let it be." Amber looked up, saw him, and waved. "Hello, traveler. You look lost. Care to warm yourself by my fire?" "Damn it." Underscore 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 underscore. The fire faded. Little by little, bit by bit, worn down by time and the chill of the night alike, it slowly succumbed to its fate. With each passing moment it grew weaker, unable to sustain itself. A hooded figure regarded the dying sparks with a put-upon sigh. "You're going to be difficult tonight, aren't you?" Echoing that very thought, the campfire crackled gloomily. There was something foreboding about it. No matter how much she fed the campfire, it remained the same. Regardless of the sticks and branches she urged into that faltering flame, the embers continued to die. Soon, only cinders would remain, and she a silly girl camping out in the middle of nowhere, freezing to death. Amber tugged back her green hood and raised a single finger. "Well," she murmured, "it's not like there's anyone to see me do this." Bright eyes flashed with golden flames, magical fire seeking at her lashes before smoldering away into the air. It was only a momentary use of her power, little more than a blink. Her power sang. Fire leaped from that lone digit, lending her fire some much-needed fuel. In a matter of moments the blaze was burning brighter than ever before. A deep cherry red, like blood. Something shifted in her peripherals. Her head snapped up. Their keen eyes glimpsed someone in the darkness, a figure just down the road, barely visible in the light of the shattered moon. He shuffled her way almost hesitantly, as though they were afraid to approach. Perhaps they were. One did not simply approach a stranger's campfire in the dead of night, least of all in the wilds of Vale. Who knew what might be lurking in the dark? "Hello, traveler," she called out to the stranger. "You look lost. Care to warm yourself by my fire?" His shoulders stiffened, and she wondered if he would simply melt back into the black. Gods, she hoped not. In truth, she'd be glad of company on a night like this. "Thanks." A low voice sighed. "I'd appreciate that." Amber perked up a little as they stepped into view. Limned in the light of the faltering fire, his was a whiskered visage, a face framed by strike blue eyes and wild blonde hair. Like her, he was dressed for the road ahead, clad in dark LTHR with his scent and shoulders lightly armored. Of a weapon, she saw no sign. Somehow that left her at ease. He looked harmless enough. Weapon or no, few could stand against her power. "You look familiar," she murmured. "Have we met?" His brow furrowed a little. "I don't think so." "Oh, I'm sorry. Forget I said anything." She scooted aside for him, making way on the log. He sat gratefully and warmed his hands by the fire. She couldn't help but notice the calluses on his hands. Not so weak after all. This was a warrior, someone who knew how to defend themselves. It's strange to see someone out here alone. Try as she might, her gaze zipped back to his face. "Say, you really do look familiar. Are you sure? We don't know each other. Maybe in another life." The boy smiled at her, his whiskered face limned in the firelight. "I'm sorry about this, miss. I had a wonderful time chatting with you." "Oh." Amber felt the beginnings of a frown pluck at her lips, her spirits faltering just a little. "Are you leaving already?" His hand latched onto her face. Something seized her soul and pulled strong. "I am so sorry." Pain, betrayal. Amber kicked out with both legs and narrowly succeeded in pushing him away. The young man let her go, but when he did, most of her strength went with him. "No," she recoiled with a grasp, struck the ground and tried to crawl away. Weak, so weak. Breathing became an effort. The every act of moving threatened to drain her completely. Where had it gone? "Well done, dear." A woman with dark hair emerged from the shadows of the night and stalked after her. "I know what it's like to lose, child." That golden-eyed beauty drew one of her blades from her back as she walked, wielding it loosely in a reverse grip. To feel so desperately that you're right, yet to fail nonetheless. It's frightening. Turns the legs to jelly. I ask you, to what end? A heel slammed into the fall maiden's back, pinning her in place. Dread it. Run from it. Destiny arrives all the same. Her blade swept up in a gleaming arc. Amber cast a fretful glance at the boy. He wouldn't look at her. And now, it's here? Or should I say, I am. Lightning crackled through the grief-stricken sky overhead as his mother strengthened her stance and prepared to finish what he'd started. Die now, and know that I will use your power in ways you cannot possibly imagine." No. The blade came crashing down at Amber's back. Not like this. Wide eyes burst into gold. Anything but this. Her back arched with a shriek as her power sparked back to life. And then there was light. Cinder crashed backward with a pained cry. Amber paid her no mind and shot to her feet. Wind lashed at her face, carrying her up to safety, holding her aloft in spite of her exhaustion. Weakness fled. Wrath and fury and fire rushed in to fill the void, emboldening her, empowering her, filling her with newfound strength. High above the clouds swirled, darkening in response to the seething hatred within her. When she spoke, her voice boiled with the fury of the storm itself. "I refuse to die like this." Flinging a hand to the sky, she rained lightning down upon mother and son alike. They turned to mist. No, not mist. Her bolts passed right through them. An illusion. But where? Something strong cracked into her back, and she lurched in the air, whirling to face them. A grinning boy with striking silver hair lowered his leg, grinning from ear to ear. She flattened him with a fire for it. That was her last mistake. A FL seeker of red burned in her peripherals. Amber didn't hear Naruto move, didn't see him snatch the sword from Cinder's grasp, but she felt the blade pierce her Saint. It drove through her aura and pierced her Saint, striking her from the sky as though she had been slapped by the hand of an angry god. Her body struck the ground and the blade pierced deeper still, bearing her down to the ground, sheathing itself to the hilt in her torso. Sorrowful blue eyes met wide gold, all but brimming with tears. She reached a hand out for him, trying to claw them out. "Forgive me." A girl with striking red hair hacked her hand off at the wrist, and her arm fell well short. Amber sagged to the earth with a wretched cry, mind gibbering this couldn't be happening. This wasn't it wasn't real. The woman with the dark hair was approaching now. Even as Amber's world dimmed, she watched the woman don a strange glove. No, her heart quailed at the sight of the thing, not knowing what it was, but fearing it all the same. Unclean, unholy, darkness stepped from it, the white material all but swirling with shadows. Her vision dimmed hands, and she knew what was about to transpire. "Please," she rasped, "don't. I'm sorry." The last thing she saw was the woman with golden eyes. "But I need this power." "Why?" Those poison slits narrowed. "To protect them." Darkness burst from the glove and clung to Amber's face. Her body spasmed with a gasp. Pain, so much pain. It annihilated her thoughts, tore into her soul, and shredded it apart. In her final moments, she tried to live. Tried to spite her killer and think of someone, anyone else. It availed her not. She just couldn't. Like the changing seasons, her power fled from her. It bled up the glove and into her killer. Both eyes burned with fresh flames. Her flames? She saw the smile of her killer, and knew that no one would come. She was cold now, so cold. There was no light. Nothing. No light. None at all. Her world went black. Is he still in there? As far as I know, it's impossible to tell with him. Emerald grimaced and stole a glance over Pyrrha's shoulder with chagrin. As ever, the door behind offered no response. Stubborn metal met the illusionist's gaze, refusing to yield to her glare, nor the exasperation behind it. If the one lurking within heard them, he gave no sign. They remained silent, dead as the grave, just as they'd been for days now. She looked back to find her sibling looking at her with nothing short of exhaustion, eyes drooping, shoulders sagging. "Standing guard like this won't help him," she said at last. "Go get some rest. I'll take the next watch." The redhead stifled a yawn behind her palm. "But what if he needs something?" The illusionist quirked a brow. "Don't make me knock you out." Pyrrha smiled a little at that. "You couldn't if you tried." "Fair point, but I could make a good try of it." To be fair, the warrior tried to stand fast. A yawn escaped her, wriggling past her lips before she could contain it. Her pale face flushed, and she clamped a hand down on her mouth too late. Pyrrha meant well. She really did, but she could be so damnably stubborn sometimes. Maybe a bit of rest would help. She stifled another yawn with the back of her hand. "If anything happens..." Emerald clapped her shoulder. "I'll call you." "I'm sorry." The smile she received was a weary one. "If I see Mercury, I'll give him a smack for you." "Thanks." Emerald watched her go with a smile. The moment she was gone, she whirled to face the door. Her hand closed around the handle. She felt the spike of anger from within. "All right, you stubborn bastard," she muttered to herself. "No more sulking. Time to face the world." Emerald was no fool. Many things she might be, but stupid. Not one of them. She knew Naruto was upset, nay, distraught at what they'd done to Amber. In hindsight, he had every right to be. They'd killed that poor girl in cold blood. Each of them were grappling with it in some small form or another. But this, no one expected this. How could they? There had been no word, no warning, nothing at all. Just silence. The very moment they'd returned to the gremlins, Naruto barricaded himself in his room. He hadn't emerged since. That had been nearly a week now. All attempts to extricate him since had failed. Sometimes people needed to die for those you loved. Emerald understood that. She didn't like it per se, but she accepted the necessity. Kill your enemies, and they could never rise to challenge you again. Naruto rejected that notion wholeheartedly. He preferred to win hearts and minds, to convert their foes to their side whenever he could. But this time he couldn't. As such, Amber's death had hit him strong. He hadn't been the one to deal the final blow that fell to Mother, but he'd started the conflict all the same. He'd been the one to lull her into a false sense of security, the first to strike. Mercury was no help at all here, in that he felt absolutely not guilt for what they'd done. Pyrrha did, but in a more distant sense. Neither truly understood. Hazel at least expressed some modicum of pity for Amber's death. He'd been the only one to bring Naruto his meals during his self-imposed exile. Watts wasn't allowed anywhere near him, and Tyrion, madman that he was, simply couldn't comprehend why someone would feel bad over killing a maiden. Neither could Salem, evidently. Worse still, Cinder, the one person who might have snapped the blonde out of his funk, was nowhere to be found. And not for the reason one might think. Naruto refused to see her. Mom had tried to force her way in there once, tried to make him see sense, to understand why this was necessary. Once. Never again. Not after he'd screamed at her. Emerald still remembered those hateful words, the way they'd echoed on that fateful day. His eyes had burned bright and red and so terribly angry with her. "Out! Get out! Leave me alone!" Emerald had never seen Cinder flee like that before. She'd kept her distance since. Now, against her better judgment, she eased the door open. Naruto? The room within was a grand one. What little she could see of it in the dark. Palming the light SWCH did no good. He'd cut the power. She only had the meager light of a moonlit window to see by, and what she did she was ruined, scratched by sharp claws, sundered by heavy blows. The curtains ripped from the wall and torn to shreds. There was BLD on the cratered wall, likely from where he'd punched it. Here at last, Emerald felt fear. He'd done all this without a sound. A shadow on the bed turned to face her. She gasped. He was a mess. Those once bright blue eyes were now dull and lifeless, his clothes rumpled, no smile to be seen. Like someone had reached deep inside him and snuffed out all light, all hope, everything that made Naruto who he was. It hurt more than words. She couldn't bear to see him this way. "Go away, Emerald." He must have heard her gasp, because he immediately rolled over and turned his back on her. "I'm not in the mood." She nearly did. If he was this angry, she didn't want to test his temper. Instead, she set her jaw and edged forward. He didn't challenge her, only hunching further in on himself. Here at last she hesitated, her hand hovering over his shoulder. She could have hit him with one of her illusions, made him hear or see something that wasn't there, made him feel better. But she dare not. Not here. Not now. "We're all worried about you." She sat down beside him instead. "You've got us worried sick." "Are you?" Something cracked in his voice. "You have a funny way of showing it." She frowned. "That's uncalled for." "I don't think it is." Silence fell. "And talk to me." Emerald touched a hand to her saint, praying he would see sense. "Tell me what's wrong." Realizing she wouldn't be dissuaded, Naruto sat up and turned to face her at last. Dark-rimmed eyes regarded hers, heavy from lack of sleep. Emerald flinched at the simmering sorrow there. She knew what he wanted. He was waiting for her to back down, to retreat as she always had before. A year ago she might have, a furtive girl who ran faced with conflict. Not this time. She knew Naruto wasn't the violent sort, but she'd never seen him this angry, either. A muscle jumped in his jaw. "You already know. don't patronize me." "Nice try." Emerald crossed both arms across her bosom and fixed him with her darkest glower. In the end, he was the one to relent. "That girl Amber is dead." When Naruto finally spoke, his words were little more than a hollow whisper. "She was minding her own business and I killed her. And nobody cares." Soulful blue eyes turned on her. I asked Mercury how he felt and he laughed. His fist swung back and obliterated the wall behind him. "Pyrrha was barely any better. Don't even get me started on Mom. We all played a part in it." Emerald touched one hand to his arm. "The guilt is ours to share. Maybe they're just coping with it." "You don't understand." He slapped her arm away and tore at his hair. "I could have talked Mom out of it." Haunted blue eyes found hers. "Found another way. Convinced her to side with us, like I did with all of you. But no." His shoulders slumped with a miserable sigh. "I chose the easy way out. The path of least resistance, and she died for it." His words stabbed into her, a knife in her heart. There was no other way. None that they knew of. The power of a maiden could only be transferred through death. There had been talk of an aura transfer machine by Watts, but that was a ways away at best. Even then they didn't know if it would work. Emerald knew better than to mention it here and now. The reminder might well push him over the edge. "Wasn't there?" His eyes snapped to hers, furious scarlet slits meeting startled crimson. "We killed that girl, Em." A finger stabbed outward at her, and she couldn't help but flinch in the face of it. "We murdered her in cold blood, and for what? So Mom could get stronger?" A bitter laugh burst out of him. "That girl died crying, sobbing, weeping, begging for mercy, all because I didn't look strong enough." Clawed hands dug into the mattress, tearing through the thin fabric with an awful sound. "Because I wasn't strong enough to make her see. Because not one of you would listen to me." Her palm blurred. Naruto's head barely moved. Yet it was Emerald who cried out. "Oh, damn it!" She recoiled at once, clutching her throbbing hand. "What's your skull made of? Pure metal?" Naruto frowned back at her, wholly unfazed. "What was that for?" For being an idiot." She rounded on him with a snarl. "Do you think you're the only one tearing yourself up over this? I can't claim to know what you went through before I met you, but I know you're stronger than this. Stronger than me. That was my first kill, too." When he didn't reply, she bowled up to him and smashed her forehead against his. "I'm going to be super PSS if you up and lose your nerve now." A beat of silence passed between them. For a wild moment, she imagined it going further still. "And I?" She swallowed. "I think I love you." "No." Emerald shook her head and banished the happy little daydream before it could consume her. Bad girl, focus, imagination aside, she didn't dare say it. Not here. Not now. This was neither the place nor the time, no matter how she might feel about him. Blast it all, she cared too much to leave him like this. Not as a sibling, but something more. Naruto nearly choked on his own spit. "Come again." Emerald's world ground to an awful halt. Had she said that aloud? Nuwu. She buried her head in her hands and groaned into her aching palms. "Ignore that. Forget it. You heard nothing." Oddly enough, that seemed to calm him. His eyes shimmered back into their true blue. "Let me see your hand." She growled at him, not trusting his sudden calmness for a moment. "Why?" "Don't be stubborn," he snapped back. "Hand, now." Emerald complied with a put-upon sigh. Her fingers trailed over his palm, tracing the calluses there to distract herself. They weren't kids anymore. He could have broken her arm any number of ways, snapped her in half like a matchstick, but he didn't. For all his anger and petulance, Naruto would never hurt those he cared for, knowingly or otherwise. With neither word nor warning, he tugged her down into his lap. Emerald jolted a little, but didn't fight him. He considered her palm for a moment. "You've got 3 hairline fractures and a broken finger." He tutted softly as he ran his fingers over the back of her hand. "Hold still. This won't take long." A pulse of warm light pushed itself into Emerald's palm, and she winced as she felt the bone set itself. There was no pain, only a faint numbing sensation as his chakra crept into her body. Really, it was rather pleasant, like rolling in warm grass on a sunny day. Her heart quickened as fire flooded her veins. A small sigh escaped her lips. It was the work of an instant, and then he was done. "There we go." He released her hand far too soon for her liking, and nudged her down onto the bed beside him. "You're right as rain." A spot of high color hit her cheeks as she turned to face him. Her hip brushed his. "What I said earlier." "I know." Much to her chagrin, he looked away. "Maybe I'm overthinking things, but I see Nat help, but feel that she didn't have to die." Now it was Emerald's turn to wince. "I'm sure Cinder didn't enjoy killing her." "She sure as hell seemed happy." "Did you think to ask her?" The door creaked open. "She's right, you know?" A familiar voice drawled from the hall. "I didn't enjoy it, or do you think so little of me?" Emerald whirled and saw Cinder's silhouette within. So did Naruto, because his eyes turned to chips of red ice as their mother approached. She saw his back stiffen, watched him raise his chin, prepared to meet any retort she might give. 3 quick steps carried her across the threshold to meet them. Another brought her to the bedside entirely. All the while he watched her like a skittish fox, ready to bolt at the slightest provocation. Cinder's lips parted, then closed again as she struggled with the words. In the end, she finally found 3. "You look awful." His face hardened. "So do you. Where have you been?" "And giving you your space." Her lips pursed in a thin line. "And thinking of things." "Well, I'm right here." Naruto scowled and spread his arms. "Go on. Tell me how disappointed you are." "Why do you twist my words?" "I'm not twisting anything if it's the truth." Emerald's heart sank. They were going to fight again. "Should I go?" Blazing golden eyes met hers. "Stay." "Yeah, stay." Naruto never took his eyes off Cinder. Not for a moment. This should be good. Cinder's eyes burned with flames, trailing embers of molten light at the edges. With a supreme effort of will, she closed them and exhaled. "Do you know why I killed that girl?" They fluttered open a moment later. "Why she had to die, why she was a necessary sacrifice." Naruto raised his chin. "No, but you're going to tell me, aren't you?" She favored him with a sad smile. "To protect you." His jaw seeked open. "Eh?" Their mother didn't rise to the bait. Instead, she circled the bed and sat beside him on his unoccupied side. Naruto stiffened at once and tried to bolt, only for her to clamp down on his wrist. Emerald saw her opportunity at once and latched onto his other arm, essentially trapping him between the two of them. He glared bloody red daggers at the both of them. Emerald clung tight. "Sorry, not sorry. I took this power to better protect the 4 of you." Cinder continued, pulling him closer to the back of the blonde's head with her free hand. "Yet rather than let me explain, you lashed out." When he looked away, she cupped his chin in her hand and turned him back to her. "You wanted your space. I gave you it. But now I have a question of my own. What do you want?" Naruto recoiled. Just like that. Her head bobbed in a slow, silent nod. "I want things to be normal. I don't want you to." "I understand." She touched his face. "You won't have to kill someone like that ever again. I swear it." "Not good enough," he shook his head, vehement in his protest. "I want a chance to talk with anyone we deal with in the future. To convince them rather than just cut them down." Cinder stifled a sigh behind her teeth. "That may not be enough. They deserve a chance. Amber didn't get one." Anger flashed into the eyes of their mother. For an awful moment Emerald wondered if Cinder would snap at him for that, call him a fledgling and a fool. She closed them and took a deep breath. When next she opened them they were calm once more, reflecting one of the inner turmoil she must have felt. Very well. It wasn't a promise easily made, let alone kept. Yet she made it anyway. He chewed on his lip. "Promise." Her arms closed around him. "You have my word." "I'm sorry," I shouted. "That's all right, dear. We're family. It happens." Naruto warbled once and his control broke as he hiccuped. "I'm sorry." Emerald scooted forward. Cinder joined her. Together, mother and daughter held him as he wept. "I should have been there. You brought her body back. Kuro, you've done enough." Kuro considered himself to be a rational man. Well, when he was sober at any rate. Right now, he wasn't feeling rational. Anger boiled in his gut as he gazed upon Amber's grave. Her coffin stared back at him as she was lowered into the ground, condemning for his failure. "You did this," it seemed to say. "I'm dead because of you. You let me die. Kuro, where were you when I needed you? Why do you always let those around you die? And she was right. He'd failed. Again. Even the heavens seemed to weep for her death. Thick, heavy raindrops spattered down from on high, crashing against their umbrellas as they watched her be laid to rest. With a growl, Branwen gripped his flask and white-knuckled in his hand and drank. Amber had been laid to rest with full honors befitting a huntress. No one knew the truth. Officially, her death was slain by Grimm or some tripe like that. But they knew. They knew why she had been target. Her power SCK out of her, body left to languish by the roadside. By the time he'd found her, the birds had already gotten to her. Just thinking of what he'd seen threatened to make his gorge rise. Do we have any leads? Ozpin didn't move from his vigil beside him. Had I any, you would be the first to know. It was my job to watch her. He reiterated, squeezing his flask so strong that he felt the metal creak ominously in his fist. I should have been there, but I wasn't. Anxiety coiled in his scent, an ugly reminder of his semblance and the curse he carried. Someone died on my watch again, just like Summer. We both know that wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? He rounded on him with a snarl. Ozpin bore his rage with all the patience of an immortal. Calm down, he said. Behave, he said. He was so far beyond calm. He whirled and stalked away. Where are you going? Ozpin called a this back. To train my nieces. War's coming. Gotta make sure they're ready. Ozpin let him go, his mind already elsewhere. Salem had struck the first blow. She had the power of the Fall Maiden now, and with it, access to the vault. Perhaps it was time to take additional precautions to protect the relic. He couldn't move the crown from its resting place without the maiden, but he could make reaching it a great deal more difficult. In the end, that was all he could do. Who knew what dastardly scheme Salem was plotting? What horrific scheme was she preparing even now? Only time would tell. Underscore 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 bliss. This was pure bliss. Nothing could possibly compare. Salem sighed softly and wriggled her hips, leaning further back in her chair. From there she stretched, further luxuriating in this pleasant sensation. Lower, she commanded. No, a little lower. There, a low contralto of a mon escaped her. Perfect. Say what you would about Naruto's squeamishness when it came to killing, but the boy was quite adept when it came to brushing her hair. She couldn't bear to remember the last time she had worn it down, or even bothered to wash it anything that wasn't a grim pool. You really should keep it down like this. Naruto hummed a little as he renewed his ministrations. Looks better, you know? I'll consider it if you brush it every day. He scoffed. Auntie, no. Salem closed her eyes, luxuriating in this pleasant feeling. Such a good boy. Would that she had found him before Cinder. The things she could have taught him. Ah, well, she was content to be an aunt. Not a grandmother, of course, no, never a grandma. That implied age. Age meant she was old. And really, she was. But she wasn't about to go shouting it to the heavens. Eternal youth immortality had its perks, after all. Speaking of youth, these attempts to sway her were blatantly obvious. He wanted something from her. Why else would her precious nephew go out of his way to lavish care on her only a day before his mother's birthday, before she planned to send them to Beacon? No, he was up to something. Not that she minded after all. Destroying humanity was strong work, even for a queen of the Grim. She deserved to be spoiled once in a while, damn it. If you keep massaging my hair like that, I'm going to fall asleep. She felt the brush slacken as he considered her words. Do you want me to stop? No, I didn't say that. By all means, continue. Silence held between them while he worked. I wanted to ask. No, you don't want to swim in the grim pools. She cut in with a bemused smile. It's not a pleasant experience, I assure you. The stench is downright impossible to get out of your clothes. What? No. The poor lad recoiled as if she'd zapped him. That wasn't what I wanted to ask. His yelp drew a rare peal of laughter from Salem, so easily excitable. I speak in jest, she said. You needn't flail about like that. Her darling nephew blinked, somewhat taken aback. Didn't know you had a sense of humor. Salem supposed she did on occasion. Besides, she found herself in a rather favorable mood this evening. Yes, she considered. Here and now, she felt almost human again. Her hair had been brushed to shine, and she was rather comfortable in her seat. Perhaps she granted him a bubbin this once, as a good aunt would. You're here to ask about Cinder, aren't you? About her past. He flinched a little, brush nearly snagging in her hair before he caught himself. How did you know? Dear boy, she reached around to pat his cheek as a mother might. I may not look it now, but once upon a time I was a parent. I know how to read naughty children. His ears twitched. You were? Mom never told me about that. Yes, I had 4 lovely little girls. Cinder is not to blame for your lack of knowledge thereof. A small frown tugged at Salem's lips. There is only one living man in this world who knows the trust of my past, and he is somewhat indisposed at the moment. She could hardly expect Ozma to tell the truth now, could she? Naruto didn't dare interject. And so she patted her left leg. That's enough brushing for one day. Come here. Naruto obeyed instantly, all but plonking himself down on her lap, just off-center as a child might. Salem kept her face stony throughout, even as a small voice squealed in the back of her head. Such a good lad. Cinder never let her do this any more ahem. Where to begin? She mstr herself with a quick cough. When your mother first came to me, a pale finger touched her chin as she struggled to remember that pivotal moment in time. She'd lived so long, so many memories, all woven together into a tangled tapestry. It was difficult to reach back and pluck one among many. Difficult perhaps, but not impossible. Aha, she had it now. When we first met, Cinder was younger than you are now. Awe flashed across his face. Really? Really? Salem dashed his smile with a scoff. She was a skinny little thing, like a twig. Really? You'd never know by looking at her now. Naruto sat just a mite bit straighter in her lap. How old was she? 13. She lowered her voice to a dulcet whisper. Young enough to wear a grim onesie to bed at night. He gasped to hide his laughter. No. Yes, try as she might, the queen couldn't quite curtail the smile from her face. She was such an adorable little thing. I have an entire album of her. Perhaps I'll show you sometime. Underscore 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 achoo. Deep within the manor, Cinder sneezed. Someone's talking about me again, aren't they? Underscore 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 Salem heard a noise in the distance. If one were to strain their ears, they might have heard more than that soft, strangled sound. It sounded strangely like the once mighty pride of Cinder Fall plummeting to new depths. Bah, probably her imagination. She had a story to tell. If you must know, I found her in Atlas Step out of a burning hotel with BLD on her blades. She paused, letting those words sink in. I don't know the secrets of her past, but I suspect she'd kill to keep it buried. She all but butchered the last person to inquire. Her nephew gulped. Is that so? As if Cinder could possibly bring herself to harm this boy. Naruto had her wrapped around his little finger, to say nothing of his ever-growing strength. Once he unlocked his full potential, he would be a fearsome force indeed. Don't worry. Salem patted his head to ease his fears. You've had a calming effect on her. Well, she amended at his sour scowl, you and your friends. Regardless, she's a great deal more patient now than she once was. Did you know what she once desired? Not but power. Nah. Naruto waved an arm, refusing to believe her. Not Mom. She's not like that. Oh, but she was. Before she found you, she was fixated only on becoming stronger, to the exclusion of all else. His face closed down. But you said it yourself, she's not like that now. No, she wasn't. Once upon a time that might have been a problem. A weed to be plucked before it could take root. But Cinder's unlikely kindness had already paid dividends. Her choices had drawn 4 skilled fighters to their side. An illusionist, a girl with MSTR of all things metal, and an unmatched assassin. Then of course, there was him, a boy with incredible power, one that reminded Salem so much of her own children. A small sliver of empathy stirred to life in her dark heart. It felt suspiciously like kindness. How revolting. Be good to your family. She touched a hand to Naruto's cheek once more. Love them. Cherish them. You never know when you might lose them. Wait, Naruto interjected suddenly, were you serious about the pool of darkness? I was. Her eyes drilled into him when he began to fidget. If anyone would survive, I would wager it would be you. Who knows? Her forehead embraced his. It might even make you more powerful. Strong enough to protect all that you love. The door to the main chamber slammed open with a dull thud. Salem, Cinder stalked, not walked. In, eyes blazing with flames, cheeks nigh on pink with embarrassment. What did you tell him? Things. Salem hummed. You forget yourself, Cinder. Show me the respect I am deserved. Unless you'd like to take you over my knee again. Naruto sniggered. Her maiden made a keening noise between herself. It almost sounded like hot air escaping a tea kettle. No. She tried to rally. No, my queen, that won't be necessary. Come now, don't make such a racket. Really, she was too easy to tease. We were just finishing up for the day. Golden eyes flighted to Naruto, narrow with suspicion. May we be excused from your presine? Certainly. Salem hummed. We can continue this discussion at another time. She caught Naruto's arm as he hopped down, pulling him close. Remember, she whispered, it's our little secret. Cinder scowled and ushered him away. She let go with a small smile. And so the seed was planted. Cinder had never expected to be a mother. She had said it once before, and would gladly say it again, for she felt it needed repeating. In all her days and all her years, she had prepared to be many things, even anticipated a few. A warrior, a killer, a conqueror of men. She'd thought power was all she wanted, all she needed. She'd thought her heart would never warm for another, ever again. She'd been wrong. Nor had she expected to be a full maiden so soon, let alone the fall maiden. She supposed there was some poetic irony to be had there. The power was hers like her namesake, won in rightful contest, her strength secure for decades to come. She could feel it pulsing in her veins, might to unmake the world, the ability to command the seasons themselves. Her children, and didn't her heart just lurch at that word, had made the impossible possible and helped her achieve her heart's longing. Now if only she knew where that blasted relic was, this would be so much easier. Trust Ozpin to keep that card close to his saint. If he'd simply placed it somewhere outside that wretched school, there would be no need for any of this. There would be no need for the White Fang, for subtlety or subterfuge, for any of it. But life, like destiny, was seldom simple. And thus, new angle, nay, a different approach was required. Naruto would be sent to Beacon. Emerald and Mercury would accompany him, the better to help him ferret out its secrets and the relic within. Pyrrha she would keep close. They would arrive shortly before the festivities commenced. The former might even have a chance to compete if she had her way. After all, the Nico's name was well known, even in exile. How nice of Lionheart to provided them aliases to work with. Even cowards had their uses. The poor girl wasn't much pleased at the idea of separation, but she'd been told the plan ahead of time, Schemes aside, she didn't like being separated from her siblings. But she had a pivotal part to play, a purpose that could not be achieved in Beacon. They had animals to recruit and maiden powers or no, she didn't trust Adam to listen if it was her alone. If worst came to worst, Roman and Neo would look after Naruto and the rest. This was the only way. Though it hurt her heart to do it, she must. In conclusion, she'd not expected any of this. No, never this. Ha! A triumphant shout tore her out of her reverie and back to reality. She opened her eyes and fought down a frown as Pyrrha's javelin hit out at Naruto's face with frightful speed. Aura or no, a blow like that would draw BLD. Honed to a fine point and forged from the darkest of steel, the cold weapon cut a whirl of wild death before her. Weaving an impossibly intricate pattern he had no possible hope of breaching. So he didn't. Naruto never had any need of weapons. Why would he? His body was the weapon. Rather than retreat, her eldest waded in, catching the weapon between his ribs and arm. A quick tug reeled Pyrrha in like a fish. She headbutted him for it, and he returned it tenfold. His knee slammed up into her gut, forcing her to fold against him. Mercury took that moment to lunge in from the side, slamming an iron-shod butt down on his exposed back. Naruto swayed aside and reached back with his free arm, catching the former assassin by the throat. In the same moment he whirled and whipped a tether of scarlet chakra outward, creating a giant fist to snatch up Emerald before she could hamstring him. All this in less than 9 seconds. Pyrrha slumped at his feet, wasted and gasping for air. "Ack," Mercury slapped at his arm. All right, I give. Geez, you're a monster, couldn't even make you use your clones." Emerald made a rare noise of anger as he released them. "You said you wouldn't use the fox, that's cheating." All she received was a shrug. "Well, we are the bad guys." Someone was laughing. It took Cinder a moment to realize it was her. She clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle it, to no avail. "Mom," Naruto prodded her. "You're grinning again." "Ahem," she looked away to hide it. "It's nothing." He frowned. "Looks like something to me." Blast it all, she'd gotten attached. She'd realized it before, but here, with the 4 of them looking up at her, looking to her for guidance, it truly sank in. Life had been so much easier when she had wanted power for power's sake alone, when she was wicked because she liked it, when there was nothing else to fill her heart save fire. She'd come undone. The realization should have spurred her to act, to cut away these superfluous bonds, but she couldn't. If getting rid of Naruto was like hacking off a hand, eliminating Emerald would be akin to tearing out her left eye. To deprive herself of Mercury felt like setting herself on fire. The very concept of punishing Pyrrha threatened to steal her breath couldn't do it. They'd wormed their way into her heart, involved themselves in every facet of her life. They were a part of this now, to the bitter end. And so she told them her plans. The trio listened intently. "We're going to infiltrate Beacon," her son blinked. "Just the 4 of us? What about you?" Cinder's smile was nothing short of sly, even as they glared at her. "The 3 of you, actually. Pyrrha and I have tasks to accomplish." All eyes turned to their resident redhead. Pyrrha dithered and muttered in assent. Cinder stepped back. Just as well, because the trio absolutely dove on her. Was it possible to triple group hug someone? They made a good show of it. She didn't even try to escape. Not that she could have with the 3 of them sandwiching her. "It's only a few months." Naruto's forehead embraced hers. "We'll see you soon." Mercury tousled her hair. "Try not to have too much fun, yeah?" Emerald squeezed her tightest of all. "Don't forget us." Tears burned in Pyrrha's eyes. "No, never." Cinder huffed and stepped in to embrace the lot of them. "Remember, be safe. Underscore 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 wait an extra year before Beacon, they said. It'll be fine, they said. Bullshit, she said. Velvet buried her head in her hands as her scroll bleated once more in her lap. Maybe if she ignored it, they'd stop calling. Surely that wasn't the wrong thing to do, right? She closed her eyes and counted to 3, hoping against hope. No dice. It kept vibrating, fell off her leg, and clattered to the floor. Her parents were persistent if nothing else. Or more aptly, her mother. A frustrated whine escaped her teeth. Everyone was looking at her. She was already in Beacon, blasted. Initiation was tomorrow. She needed her sleep. And yet her scroll continued to ring. Meg Scarlatina loved her daughter. No one could fault her for that. Of course she did. As a hopeful huntress who wanted nothing more than to follow in her mother's footsteps, Velvet longed to make her proud. Even if it meant sacrificing an entire year to train, to wait while everyone else her age applied. She felt confident in the fruits of her training at least. Remnant was a dangerous place these days. She'd not have waited otherwise. As if on cue, her scroll fell silent. She dared look down. A single text awaited her eyes. Love you, sweetie. Hope you make lots of friends. Velvet slammed her phone down. Moom. You okay? Meep. She jumped and rounded on the speaker, all but clutching her phone to her CHC. How much of that did you hear? Her mind kicked into overdrive as she saw him. The first thing she noticed were his whiskered cheeks. Well, that and the whole wild blonde hair and blue eyes bit, but mostly the whiskers. Definitely a faunus with those cheeks. Had to be, maybe a year younger than her, but technically everyone was. Oddly enough, that set her skittish heart at ease. If it was a fellow faunus, she didn't feel quite so bad for staring. Wait, does that make me a racist? Her mind bleated in a panic. Am I profiling a fellow faunus? It was too much. Her eyes started to spin. So, hey there. Utterly unaware of her plight, the blonde remained where he was despite her fight. You all right? You were getting pretty loud. Her cheeks heated. That was a family member. Figured. Your mom, right? She managed a nod. Oh gods, he'd laugh at her for this and call her a mama's girl. So why did he look so understanding? I mean, I get it. He laced both hands behind his head. My mom's a bit of a control freak, too. When she continued to stare at him, he balked a little and jammed them into his pockets instead, more a nervous tick than anything else. I love her and all, just like that they came out again, gesticulating wildly. But sometimes she really tries too strong, you know? Relief crashed down on her in a cleansing wave. Anyway, I'm Naruto. The boy offered his hand. Just thought I'd say hi. Velvet moved. Now it was his turn to jolt as her palms clamped down on his. Finally, someone who understood what it was like to have persistent parents. You get me. The boy blinked. Bunny, say what now? I'm sorry, she jerked back with a wince. He laughed at it. Nah, it's fine. A scarred hand waved. A friend of mine apologizes a lot, that's all. Velvet found herself blinking at that. She stepped back to consider him anew. He didn't look rough per se, but there was something about his sunny smile that left her ears standing on end ... in a rather good way. Like he was glowing, even if he wasn't. He radiated confidence, a staid boldness that she'd always lacked. Too good. Her instincts bleated. Too pure. Must protect. Anyway, you want to come sit with us? He waved to nearby space where a silver-haired boy and green-haired girl were sprawled out. They were glaring bloody red daggers at one another for something or other, but at his whistle they seeked a glance their way. The girl even looked up and waved. Velvet felt her knees twist in quiet anxiety. What was the harm? I think I'd like that. Great. Naruto grabbed her hand, and she had an appealing instant to balk at just how warm his fingers were before she found herself tugged toward them. The ghost of a smile touched her lips as he made introductions. Well, she wanted to make friends. And like the whispered prayer of a little girl, the gods had answered. Things were looking up. Underscore 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 until they weren't. And with that said, Ozpin swept his arm wide across the stage, taking them all in with a single gesture. I proudly present Team Venom, led by Miss Scarlatina. Beneath the spotlight, Velvet blinked slowly. It took a moment for the words to sink in. Once they did, her ears drooped. Me? Initiation had been a blur. She'd barely even recalled most of it. Truth be told, it had been a mad dash to find a relic, followed by a partner, then make her way to the cliffs. There was little in the way of grim, some might even say suspiciously so, until they blundered into Emerald and Mercury. She hadn't done much to lead, hardly anything at all. But really, Venom, what kind of color was that? Ozpin coughed. I believe it varies, Miss Scarlatina. A fiery flush crawled up the back of Velvet's neck and burst into her cheeks. Oh God, she'd said that aloud, hadn't she? And that, too. Naruto nudged her with an elbow. Don't worry, I'm sure you'll make a great leader. Velvet disagreed wholeheartedly with those words. She tucked her ears down to hide her eyes. I want to die. The relic wasn't in Beacon. It was the only excuse that made a LCK of sense to Emerald anymore. In the last month, they turned the campus inside out, upside down, and right side in. Was that last one even a thing? Meh, semantics. And what did they have to show for their strong work? Not a thing. Noting, less than nothing, if that was even possible. Just thinking about their abject failure made her want to scream. Banging her head against her pillow, she stifled a sigh. They'd been so careful too. Terribly subtle in their efforts as they played the part of students. Never once giving themselves away, never together, never letting their so-called leader cotton onto their schemes. Not once. All that work, all that stress, for nothing. They'd hit a dead end. She could just imagine Cinder's face now. Her lips pursed, golden eyes narrowed in thinly veiled exasperation, a look she'd often saved for those rare, spectacular screw-ups that happened every now and again in Salem's tower. But this was shaping up to be one of those now, and when it did. It's not fair. Emerald flung up her hands, only to curse when her fist smacked the bed frame above her. Aura sparked to prevent injury, but it did nothing for the pain. A sharp spark lanced down her arms, and she curled in on herself with a hiss. It was too much to hope her partner wouldn't notice. Sure enough, a familiar head of silver hair hung down over the bed. Having marital problems, are we? BSTRD was teasing her about Naruto again. Bite me, Mercury. No can do. The insufferable snark of his didn't waver, not for a moment. That's the boss man's purview. Her face flamed from equal parts embarrassment and shame. Whoever said bunk beds was a good idea deserved to be castrated with a rusty knife. The assassin's grin grew to sit-eating proportions. I'll just tell Naruto that, shall I? Emerald's world sputtered to a stop. Eh? Well, it was his idea, remember? As she looked on against her accomplice fished out his scroll from one pocket and still hanging upside down, keyed up a number. I'll just let him know. No. She all but launched herself off her bed at the hand, holding the scroll, only for the merry monster to haul himself upright at the last instant. Result? Ground. Now, Mercury chided over the ringing in her ears and a mouthful of carpet. Let's not be hasty. All my hate, Mercury, she groaned into the floor. You have it. Love you too, partner. Emerald whipped a shoe at him, scowling when he dodged. He had a point, blast him. Naruto had been the one to float the idea of bunk beds in their room. It would save space, he said. Bullshit, she said. He just wanted the top bunk. Still, she couldn't very well kill her crush over something like this, even if she was tempted to hit him with a nasty illusion. Which brought them back to the matter at hand. They couldn't find the relic of choice. No amount of dancing around the matter would change that. Unless there was some sort of secret passage somewhere unlikely. Then the crown simply wasn't in Beacon. That ... complicated matters. If they didn't know where it was, that meant they couldn't locate it. If they didn't track it down before the vital festival, Cinder's invasion would be for nothing. You could attack Beacon, maybe even take it if you played your cards right, but hold it. Not bloody likely. Why hit the campus at all, if they couldn't find the relic in the first place? What was the point? No, don't think like that. She wouldn't let her mother down. Naruto had trusted her with this to fail him. Just thinking about it threatened to paralyze her. She couldn't. She wouldn't. So, Mercury plonked down on the floor beside her. What's the plan? No idea. Then don't worry so much. He patted her shoulder in a rare moment of solidarity. We'll find it, She gulped. We have to. Maybe she ought to call in a favor from Uncle Roman. She just knew the BSTRD would hold it over her head. Aunt Neo, maybe not so much, but the fact remained. They weren't making any headway. Maybe an outside perspective would help. Emerald's scroll vibrated viciously in her bed. Her head snapped up. Mercury beat her to it. Well, who do we have here? Emerald sank into the floor. Please tell me it's not Cinder. All right. His weak voice told the truth. It's not Cinder. And yet, for all that, the dread in his visage wove an altogether different tale. Emerald experienced a brief, blissful moment of confusion as she balked at him. If not Cinder, then who? Crap baskets. Hello, dear Mercury. A familiar dark contralto pulsed through the scroll. Is little Emerald there? I require an update. SHT, sit. Of all the times. Emerald burst to her feet and struggled to comport herself, all the while trying to wave him down. Too late. Even as she rose, Mercury turned the screen for her to see. She couldn't even blame him for selling her out. After all, one did not simply defy the queen. No, without consequences. There you are. Sure enough, Salem's implacable visage stared back at her. How goes the search? Her knees quivered even as she bowed her head. She didn't even have the strength to kneel. It goes well. We've narrowed it down considerably in the last 30 days. Is that so? Her head tilted a fraction of an inch, betraying nothing. Have you searched Ozma's tower yet? Or perhaps that blasted statue he's so fond of? Mercury cursed in the background. I thought not. Salem's smile proved almost motherly by comparison. My dear Ozma always did like to hide things in the oddest places. Speaking of odd, those pale fingers steepled as she laid her chin atop them. Did you manage to bed Naruto yet? Mercury's cursing became a cackle. Emerald made a choked noise. Her ears burned a bright pink. You haven't? She almost sounded surprised. Why, in my day, you would have been with child by now. Really, what is that boy doing? Gods above and spirits below. She wanted to die. She wasn't going to scream. Absolutely not. And honestly, I think Mint would be a fine name for your child. Emerald began to twitch. Pyrrha better be dealing with something half as horrific as this, or she'd eat her butt. Underscore 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 underscore. Hello, out there. A voice hallooed from the darkness. I don't suppose there's room for one more by your fire. That depends. Raven Branwen hedged, looking up from the flames. Who are you? Green eyes danced in the dark. Just a normal girl. Underscore 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 ag. Velvet's right ear twitched. Did you hear something? Nope, not a thing. Naruto planted a hand between the girl's shoulders and steered her toward another dust shop. Must be your imagination. Off we go. Inwardly, however, His mind was a whirling maelstrom. What the hell? Emerald? I've got enough problems without you shrieking your head off. I shouldn't be able to hear you all the way in Vale. He knew the reason, of course. His team was cracked. In hindsight, it was painfully obvious to him. Mercury was all too happy to live it up while he was off distracting Velvet, which left poor Emerald to agonize over their mission and the impending failure of said mission. She was pushing herself strong, much too strong. Something was going to give at this rate. Sounded like her sanity. Then there was the matter of their leader. Serious confidence issues there. Almost worryingly so. Naruto had taken it upon himself to try and mend those problems time and again, but the end was still nowhere in sight. Did he want to bring her into the fold? He didn't know. What he did know was the risk. Velvet was harmless for now. If it came to a fight, he knew they could take her. But if she cottoned onto their scheme, if she realized what they were after and rejected it, they'd have to do something her. Maybe even silence her altogether. Their poor bunny didn't deserve that. Wait, by the log, he was going native. No, he shook his head fiercely, shoved the thought into a box, and locked it up. Mustn't get attached. If he had his way, this would be a clean job with no casualties. But if something went wrong? Naruto blinked, realizing Velvet was looking up at him, that she had been for quite some time now. I'm sorry, what was that? You weren't paying attention, were you? The brunette's long ears drooped as she hung her head. You've been like this all day. Her very shoulders seemed to quiver as he looked on. I knew it. This was a bad idea. Why would you ever want to go shopping with someone like me? She sniffled a little. Actually sniffled. Naruto physically flinched. Mayday, mayday, mayday. All hands to battle stations. Look, it ain't you, all right? He wasn't lying when he scratched at the back of his head. You're doing great, taking the initiative like this. I mean, going out to make sure everyone on the team has dust. That's what a good leader does. Me, I've just got a lot on my mind. Tell you what, stepping in, he laid a hand on her shoulder. Why don't you pick out the best dust you can find? I'll pay for it. And maybe after, he swallowed a little, fought down his jitters, and barreled on. We can catch a move or something. I dunno. Silly boy. He had no idea what he'd just done. Really? Velvet perked up, ears gone ramrod straight. Adorable. Must protect. You mean it? Yes, really. He looked away, hiding his flush. Now hurry up and pick something. She all but bounced on one foot, pivoted, then shot into the shop with a whoop. Naruto watched her go with a rueful sigh. The things I do for my team. How little he knew. He'd do much worse than this in the future.